Ooh, you guys, I got another video you guys need to watch, okay? They are breaking it all down in this video. The mother is leaking audio. This is what they're saying. We have to see what's going on. But I know you guys like to react, the updates of Nolan. Now, you guys know these are reaction videos, so I cannot be I don't know everything they're saying is true. I mean, I don't trust the police. I don't trust the examiner, none of those people. So we'll just have to see. Because remember, they first came out here and said it was no foul play. I didn't trust that either. So, they'll tell you anything. So we have to use our discernment and we have to decipher what is true and what's not. But this is what's going on out here now. So I wanted to give you guys to check this out.
Vicky speaking. How can I help you? Hello, sir.
Hello. Okay.
How many adults on board?
Adults on board.
There's nobody on board the boat?
No. Nobody here is over the age of 21.
It's just different.
Is he dead? The question rang out amid the sound of wind, roaring engines, and the chaos aboard a boat that was taking on water. But what sends a chill down the spine is not only what can be heard, it is what may have been buried beneath the layers of background noise. Nolan Wells, an 18-year-old football player with his entire future ahead of him, disappeared after a trip to Horn Island. His phone and keys made it back to shore. Nolan did not. Now an audio recording described as the complete unedited version is raising a disturbing question. What did Nolan's mother reveal that the public had never heard before? Were the screams in the background really his final sounds? And why were the people on the boat still asking about a towing service, while someone may have been fighting for his life? If that recording is authentic, then the entire story surrounding Nolan may have been wrong from the very beginning.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership. Hey, up! Shut the fuck up! What'd you say? Hey. It's coming up. We're just thinking. I don't know. Like, we're going down now. I don't know the phone number. It's either. I think it's. Try that. I know we have a membership, like, guaranteed. I don't have the tag on here. It got ripped off. Reach me at 2. What? Yeah, everybody's off the way. What? No, we do not need that. Let me go look. Will, look. North. Alright, are you ready? North 30 degrees by 46.72. Sorry, look. What do I need to send you? Yeah, what? No, we do not have the VHF radio. Okay, my coordinates are 30 degrees by 14.684 north, and then west by 88 degrees by 46.79. Yes, we were at Horn Island. Yes. If we were sinking, yes. No, we're not aground. We are in a 17 foot of water. We're in 31 foot of water. I want to get this boat unsank and towed back, yes. You can tow it to Ocean Springs Harbor, or Fort Bayou Launch. No, there's no children. Hey, worth it. Drop in the water. Try to jump in and pull the plug while you're going.
Hold on. Take it out of gear. Take it out of gear.
Hello.
Take it out of gear.
Okay, what's going on? What's up? There are 0 adults on board. No. Nobody here is over the age of 21. Hello? Yes, there's lots of people breathing on the boat. Like 7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes, we have life jackets available. A Triton, 22 foot offshore, 22 foot Triton offshore sea flight hull.
"90 minutes erased from a fateful afternoon. On the morning of July 4th, the waters off Ocean Springs shimmered under the summer sun. Boats lined up as they left the docks carrying music drinks and the excitement of Independence Day celebrations. Amid what seemed to be nothing more than a day of fun, Nolan Wells boarded a boat with a group of friends, unaware that the short trip to Horn Island would become the final journey of his life. Horn Island was far from its usual quiet, isolated state that day. The sandy beach was packed with people, with groups gathering around boats anchored close to shore. The roar of engines blended with music, laughter, and scattered conversations. In a crowd like that, someone could be seen by dozens of people and still disappear without anyone knowing exactly when it happened. That is precisely why Nolan's final known timeline has become so important. According to publicly available information, Nolan was last seen at around 3:00 hours p.m. But being last seen does not mean someone kept him in sight until the very end. After 3:00 p.m., there is no publicly released video continuously showing where Nolan went, who he stood beside, or how he left the beach. Did he remain on the island? Did he return to the area near the boat? Or did he leave with another group? The group that is where the gap begins. The people who were with Nolan said that he voluntarily stayed behind on Horn Island with a young woman. According to their account, he was not abandoned. They claimed Nolan had made other plans to return to the mainland, possibly on another boat. At first glance, it sounds like a simple explanation, but the closer the story is examined, the more cracks begin to appear. Who was the young woman who actually heard Nolan say that he wanted to stay behind? Did he say it in front of the entire group, or was that statement only repeated by someone after he disappeared? Did any witness actually see Nolan board another boat? And more importantly, had his return to the mainland truly been arranged? Or did everyone simply assume that Nolan would find his own way back? On an island that can only be reached by water, staying behind is not as simple as leaving a party on the mainland. A person without a boat, without a means of communication, and without a clear plan could instantly find themselves in danger once the crowds began to disperse. About an hour after Nolan was last seen, the boat that had brought him to Horn Island encountered trouble. While everyone was trying to deal with the situation on board, time continued to pass. At approximately 4:31 p.m., available data indicates that the boat began leaving the area around the island. Nolan was not on board when the group headed back. So who counted the passengers before the boat departed? Did anyone return to the beach to look for Nolan? Did anyone call out his name in the crowd? Or did everyone simply believe that Nolan had chosen to stay behind, failing to realize the moment when an ordinary day of celebration turned into a missing person case? In the span of just 90 minutes, Nolan disappeared from the sight of the people who had been with him, from the journey of the boat, and from every publicly verifiable trace. But Nolan did not disappear completely. When the boat returned to Ocean Springs, a part of his life was still on board, and that very item would make the story that Nolan voluntarily stayed behind far more difficult to explain. The silent witness, inside Nolan's phone. In the darkness of the night of July 4th, those two small items lay safely on the mainland, while their owner remained missing somewhere between Horn Island and the vast waters off the Mississippi coast. To Nolan's family, this was no longer a coincidental detail. It was like a locked door behind which the final minutes no one had yet described might be hidden. According to the AP that evening, the family used a location tracking app to trace the phone to the home of a friend who had gone on the trip with Nolan. The device was recovered after he had already been reported missing. Nolan's keys were also found at the home of someone connected to the trip. But why would an 18-year-old stay behind on an isolated island without taking his phone? A friend named Warren Hudson later offered an explanation. Nolan was not the only person who had left his phone on the boat. According to Hudson, several people did so to prevent their devices from being damaged by seawater. He insisted that no one in the group opened Nolan's phone, knew the password, or deleted any data before returning the device. For now, however, this remains only the account of someone who was present on the trip, not a forensic conclusion. That explanation may make sense during the first few hours of a party at sea, but it becomes harder to understand if Nolan truly decided to remain on the island after his friends left. Did he know his phone was still on the boat? Did he think he would return to retrieve it? Or did Nolan believe someone else would keep it for him and bring it back later? Nor can the possibility be ruled out that the phone was taken off the island without Nolan's knowledge. And if he became stranded, faced danger, or tried to call for help, the only device that could connect him to his family was moving farther and farther away from shore. Suspicion deepened when Christine Wansley and other relatives checked Nolan's Snapchat account. She said they found no saved photos, videos, or other content from July 4th, even though the family described Nolan as someone who regularly recorded social gatherings. Christine said they opened the app before the 24-hour period had expired and found it unusual that there was almost no trace of activity. The family therefore questioned whether data had been deleted before the phone was returned. But an empty screen does not automatically prove that someone concealed evidence. Snapchat is designed so that some content disappears over time. Location data from Life 360 may also depend on when the device connected to a network signal quality and the phone's operating status. On Horn Island, where mobile service has reportedly been unreliable, a stationary location point may show only where the phone was, not necessarily that Nolan was with it. To uncover the truth, experts would need to look far deeper than what appears on the screen. They would need to determine the last time the phone was unlocked, the last time the device connected to a network, and when the accounts sent or received data. They would need to examine whether any activity occurred after Nolan was last seen. More importantly, they would have to distinguish between data that disappeared automatically and data that someone deliberately deleted. The family and the prosecutor's office later agreed to coordinate an examination of the phone using experts from both sides. The AP noted that it is unusual for a victim's family to take part in examining evidence alongside investigators, but that such cooperation could help speed up the effort to establish what happened. The phone cannot lie, but it cannot tell the story by itself. It records only time, location, access, traces, and gaps. The hardest part is determining whether those gaps were created by technology by chance or by a human hand. While the phone quietly awaited examination, the public was drawn to another piece of evidence, louder, more chaotic, and far more terrifying. It was a call made from the very boat that returned without Nolan. The call through the wind. A cry for help or a misunderstood piece of the puzzle. "We're sinking." The voice came through a broken connection fragmented by the wind and the chaotic sounds in the background. But the person on the other end was not a 911 dispatcher. The call had gone to Sea Tow, a private service that assists and tows vessels in distress at sea. The caller reported that the bilge pump had stopped working. Water was pouring in. The boat was described as sinking and needed to be pumped out, then towed back to Ocean Springs Harbor or Fort Bayou launch. Those are the clearest facts in the entire recording. What happened next is far more difficult to understand. When the dispatcher asked how many adults were on the boat, the caller replied, "No adults." The dispatcher thought that no one was aboard the boat. The caller then explained that no one on board was over the age of 21. The question had to be asked again, in a way that was almost impossible to misunderstand. Is there one person alive on the boat? Is anyone breathing there? Eventually, the caller confirmed that there were a lot of people breathing, and estimated that there were about 7 people. Why did such a simple question require several attempts before receiving an answer? The caller may have been panicking. He may have understood adult in the legal sense of someone over 21. The phone connection was also repeatedly breaking up. Other voices could be heard in the background, while the group was reportedly trying to keep the boat afloat. But that confusion is not enough to prove that the caller was intoxicated lying or deliberately concealing something. Then the dispatcher offered a more serious option. Do you need the United States Coast Guard? The answer came immediately. No, we don't. A boat was described as sinking with about 7 young people aboard, yet the caller refused emergency rescue assistance. Did they believe the situation was still under control? Or were they focused only on saving the boat and did not consider it a life-threatening emergency? The recording does not explain the motive. It only captures that decision. The confusion continued when the dispatcher requested the coordinates. The caller had to repeat them several times. The reported depth also changed from 17 feet to 31 feet. At times, he said the boat was sinking. At other moments, he focused on arranging a tow and confirming the membership plan. The caller did not remember the account number and provided only the name Jerry Ackerson. After several searches, Cito confirmed that the account was active and that the registered vessel was a Triton measuring about 22 feet. Captain Seth said he had just spoken with the person believed to be the boat's owner, or the caller's grandfather, who had previously said that the group did not yet need assistance. In the end, another vessel helped the boat. But it was the voices in the background that caused the recording to explode across social media. In a version said to have been enhanced and transcribed by Janetta Brantley, one brief phrase was interpreted as, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" If that phrase was actually spoken, it would completely change how the public views the call. But no independent audio expert has publicly confirmed it. No one has identified the speaker. There is no evidence that the pronoun he referred to Nolan. Most importantly, there is no publicly available evidence confirming that Nolan was on the boat at that time. Audio enhancement also has its limits. When wind noise, phone interference, and multiple voices overlap, missing sound cannot simply be restored by increasing the volume. Once listeners have seen the phrase, "Is he dead?" the brain may automatically assemble unclear syllables into the suggested sentence. To turn this section into evidence, investigators would need the original file, its editing history, a documented chain of custody, and an assessment by independent experts. Therefore, the call confirms only 4 things. The boat experienced trouble. The people aboard were panicking. There were about 7 people, and the caller declined assistance from the Coast Guard. It does not confirm that Nolan was on the boat. It does not confirm that anyone had died. It doesn't prove that the phrase, "Is he dead?" was actually spoken. And it certainly doesn't prove that the screams in the background belonged to Nolan. The recording turned Nolan into the center of a mystery. But before July 4th, he was not a voice buried beneath static. He was simply a young football player preparing to enter his next season. The young man who wore number 16, before Nolan Wells's name appeared in news reports, before audio clips were replayed again and again, and before countless questions cast a shadow over Horn Island. He was simply an 18-year-old young man trying to find his place on the football field. His full name was Nolan Xavier Wells. Nolan grew up in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, in a large family with many siblings. To outsiders, he may have been a promising young athlete. But at home, Nolan was still a son, who remained close to his mother, an older brother, who always showed special care for his younger brother and a familiar presence at family meals. At that point, his life had not yet produced achievements big enough to make front-page news. There was no multi-million-dollar contract, no professional stadium lights, no crowds of tens of thousands chanting Nolan's name. But he was already walking the path that could lead to those things. At Ocean Springs High School, Nolan pursued football, a sport that demands not only speed, but also patience and discipline. He played wide receiver, a position that requires a player to accelerate in an instant, break free from defenders, and catch passes under pressure from the opposing team. That position was in some ways similar to Nolan's own journey, always running forward even when the opportunity might never come. After graduating from high school in 2025, Nolan enrolled at Southwest Mississippi Community College. He wore number 16, continued playing wide receiver, and studied general business. Nolan was not yet the most prominent player on the team. He was still competing for more playing time and still had to prove himself through every practice and every small opportunity. But those who worked with him saw something else progress. His coaches described Nolan as hardworking, willing to listen, and not easily discouraged. Even in games when he did not get onto the field, Nolan remained on the sideline cheering for his teammates and helping keep the group's spirits high. That is not the kind of quality usually recorded on a stat sheet. A player may be remembered for the number of catches he made or the yards he gained. But sometimes what teammates remember most is the person who continued standing beside them even when he had no chance to shine himself. Away from the field, Nolan was described by those close to him as humble, respectful, and deeply devoted to his family. One story recalled by his coaches involved a visit Nolan made to the school with his younger brother. Instead of talking only about himself, Nolan asked whether his brother could try on the team uniform. It was only a small moment, but it showed that Nolan did not enter the world of football alone. He wanted to bring the people he loved into his dream, even if only for a few minutes spent wearing the team jersey. Of course, positive accounts of his character cannot be used to claim that Nolan never argued, never drank alcohol, or could not have encountered trouble on July 4th. No human being is made up only of the beautiful memories loved ones share after their death. But those details help the public see a different Nolan. Not the name at the center of online theories, not the person who may have died in a distorted audio recording, but a young man preparing to begin his second year of college, waiting for the new season, and believing he still had plenty of time ahead of him. On the night of July 3rd, one day before the trip to Horn Island, Nolan had dinner with his mother, Christine Wansley. There was no major argument, no unusual farewell, no sign that this would be their final dinner together. Before leaving home, Nolan hugged his mother, kissed her, and told her that he loved her. To Christine, it was simply a familiar gesture from her son. Nolan planned to return to school soon, to continue training and prepare for the season ahead. At that moment, everything in his life was still pointing toward the future. But some words of love become a final goodbye only after there is no longer another chance to say them. That was the last time Christine Wansley saw her son alive. 2 days later, Nolan was found in the waters off Horn Island. Nolan's body and the gaps in the forensic record. On the night of July 4th, after Nolan Wells failed to return from Horn Island, a search operation was launched with the participation of relatives, volunteers, and multiple authorities. The search focused on the island and the surrounding waters, an area accessible mainly by boat. On the morning of July 6th, a park ranger discovered Nolan's body near the northwestern area of Horn Island. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office in Pascagoula. The family confirmed his identity later that same day. Initial reports about Nolan's clothing were inconsistent. Some sources described him as fully clothed, while later corrections stated that he was wearing swim trunks. Because those descriptions changed, the clothing alone cannot be used to determine the circumstances under which Nolan entered the water. The official autopsy was conducted in Mississippi. However, the full report and toxicology results have not been widely released. Therefore, there is no public conclusion confirming whether Nolan died by drowning, accident, suicide, or the actions of another person. The family later requested an independent autopsy in Washington, D.C. Forensic pathologist Roger Mitchell conducted the second examination after the body had already undergone the initial autopsy and had begun to show changes caused by decomposition. The released findings did not identify any fractures or severe deep tissue injuries that could directly explain the cause of death. However, the doctor found an area of reddish discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of the head, measuring approximately 12 by 8 inches and located near the occipital bone. There was no corresponding tear in the skin or fracture of the skull. As a result, the doctor could not determine whether the discolored area was evidence of an injury sustained while Nolan was still alive, or a change that developed after death. The independent autopsy also faced another significant limitation. During the first autopsy, the internal organs, along with certain structures in the neck and airway, had been removed for examination. This may have been part of standard forensic procedure, but it prevented the second doctor from directly and fully evaluating the lung, stomach, airway, and some tissues in the neck. Decomposition also reduced the ability to identify minor injuries, bruising, or tissue changes. The independent doctor did not personally inspect the location where the body was found, and had to rely on scene photographs, the body recovery report, and records from the earlier autopsy. The conclusion of the independent autopsy was that the cause and manner of death remained undetermined pending further investigation. In forensic medicine, undetermined does not mean that Nolan was murdered. But the term also does not confirm that he died in an accident. It means the available evidence is insufficient to determine what caused his death and under what circumstances it occurred. Important missing information includes the toxicology results, the official autopsy report, a histological examination of the area at the back of the head, the condition of the lungs and airway, and an analysis of the currents where the body was found. Only those findings could help answer whether Nolan died by drowning, whether he was still alive when he entered the water, or had already lost consciousness when the discoloration at the back of his head developed, and whether the currents carried his body to the location where it was found. Until those results are fully compared and evaluated, science still cannot determine how Nolan Wells died. A mother confronts 3 doors that cannot yet be closed after burying Nolan. Christine Wonsley had to do more than learn how to live with her son's absence. She also had to face a case in which every answer stopped at another gap. Christine wanted to know who was truly the last person with Nolan, who heard him say that he would stay on Horn Island, who was the young woman mentioned in the account. And why did the family learn that Nolan had not returned only after so much of the evening had already passed? According to the family, the possibility of an accident was raised too early, before all the evidence had been collected and compared. Authorities may have legitimate reasons to withhold parts of the case file while the investigation remains open. But for Christine, the longer the silence continues, the more room there is for suspicion to grow. The family later turned to civil rights attorney Ben Crump. The case quickly expanded beyond a coastal community in Mississippi and drew nationwide attention. Reward money was offered in an effort to encourage witnesses to come forward. Celebrities spoke out. Nolan's name became part of broader debates about justice responsibility and how a missing person case was handled in its earliest hours. Race also became part of the discussion. Nolan was a black young man in a group of friends described by the media as predominantly white. The family questioned whether bias may have influenced the initial response. However, no publicly available evidence has so far confirmed that a racial motive was directly connected to his death. Some online headlines also claimed that Christine had leaked an unedited recording, but no reliable source has confirmed that she was the person who released it. Therefore, what Christine truly brought into the light was not a secret tape, but the questions that remain unresolved. Based on the available evidence, 3 lines of investigation still cannot be ruled out. The first possibility is that Nolan voluntarily stayed on the island and later suffered an accident. This scenario can stand only if independent witnesses confirm seeing him after the original group left, and if the person or vessel that was supposed to take him back can be identified. Location data, tidal conditions, and toxicology results would also need to support the theory that Nolan entered the water without the involvement of another person. The second possibility is that Nolan experienced some kind of incident before the boat left Horn Island. It could have been an accident, a confrontation, or a situation that left him unable to protect himself. This possibility must be examined through original video footage, separate statements from each person who was present, and digital evidence, rather than edited clips or interpretations circulated on social media. The third possibility is that Nolan left the group on another vessel. If he boarded a different boat, the place where the incident occurred may not have been where he was last seen. In that case, records of vessels near the island, GPS data images from the docks, and analysis of the currents would become crucial pieces of the puzzle. None of these scenarios has been fully proven. No one who accompanied Nolan has been publicly charged. And an unclear audio recording cannot replace verified witness statements, digital evidence, and complete forensic findings. A grand jury may eventually have to review the entire case file, witness testimony, travel data images from the island medical records, and the missing test results. Only when those sources of evidence point toward the same story can the case move closer to the truth. Christine does not need a shocking theory. She needs a timeline with no missing minutes. Perhaps the words, "Is he dead?" were never spoken. Perhaps they were spoken, but buried beneath the wind and the chaotic voices. However, Nolan Wells's fate cannot be determined by what the public believes it heard. It must be answered with evidence, because Nolan was not a mysterious sound in a recording. He was an 18-year-old young man who boarded a boat on a holiday and never had the chance to return to the football field for the next season. Conclusion. What do you think really happened to Nolan Wells during those missing 90 minutes? Was the phrase, "Is he dead?" simply a case of audio being misheard, or could it be the most important missing piece of the entire case? Share your thoughts in the comments below, but remember to distinguish between confirmed facts and theories that have not yet been supported by evidence. If you enjoy investigative case files that explore the mysteries behind real-life incidents, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the truth isn't found in what people say, it lies in the minutes that have